Hey everybody, I'm making this specifically to the students that went over to San Francisco to protest the Bank of Montreal under this idea that the Bank of Montreal is financing a coal terminal. Look, let me explain something. I'm not here to cover for anybody, but I'm here to give you the 1,000,000% truth, okay? Because somebody needs to talk to you in an unvarnished way, and I have a feeling that that has not happened. First of all, the Oakland bulk and oversized terminal has been with us since, in one form or another, as an idea in terms of a bulk commodity terminal since 1993. Actually, really for me, since 1990, because Richard Winnie was the late county council. Late meaning he died some years ago. But we used to have breakfast, and he talked to me about the importance of having a deep water port, a kind of an extension of the Port of Oakland that allows us to basically be a place where commodities can be shipped in from the east and then put on a ship via container and then sent to demand areas in what we call the Pacific Rim nations of Japan, Korea, and then of course China and the newly industrialized countries. The need for this really accelerated dramatically when the federal government closed in dramatic fashion many of the bases around the United States. The Bay Area, your San Francisco Bay Area, was hit hard. Oakland alone lost up to 7,000 direct and indirect jobs. Actually more than that when you consider the indirect jobs. What do I mean by direct versus indirect? If I do a job for you, I'm directly working for you. But let's say you're making something. That means that you will also have to order, in addition to me being under your employ, it means you have to order materials from other places, you have to hire an architect, you have to work with other people, give money to them. Those are the indirect jobs, okay? So direct, I work for you. Indirect, people are other people that are hired. And also indirect beyond that, those other people you hire have to hire other people. That's how that works, okay? In this instance, we have the idea that was put forth by Phil Tagami, who I've known since 1990. Feels like a brother to me, okay? So I'm not here to cast any, hide anything or anything like that. I'm just giving you straight out how it is. Again, because you need to hear it, because the truth is what you should know. But the truth, once you hear the truth, you'll say, oh, okay, now I get it, and I was wrong for thinking a certain way that I was told to think. All right? The point I'm making is that the idea of building the bulk and oversized terminal, as it's now called, was to replace the jobs that we lost from the Oakland Army bases closed on the land, which is in total almost 300 acres. What happened was that the project, I don't want to go into a long story about why it got slowed up by the city of Oakland, but it did. And finally, a request for proposal was released, and Phil Tagami and California Commercial Investments, then now called California Capital Group, answered and had a bid that the city of Oakland felt was the best. And it was to build what we're talking about, in part of a larger, what's called logistics terminal, with logistics kind of, it's like an airport. So you have a terminal over here for this, terminal here for that, and they work in unison to ship different types of goods and commodities in and out. Okay, that's the idea. Now, early on, the market for certain types of goods and commodities was rather weak, except for iron ore, sulfur, coal, and a few other categories of commodities within that group. So the city of Oakland and a guy named Pat Cashman hired a firm named a firm that produced something called the Tioga Study. Okay, and the Tioga Study specifically mentioned coal. The point that I'm making is that the city of Oakland, from, as you would say, jump, all right, knew that coal was a key part, coal and iron ore was a key part of the bulk terminal. You had to have contracts with people who were who needed to get coal out of their source areas, their mines, if you will, and to their the points of demand destination, where people wanted them. For example, Japan or China or Korea, as I mentioned as examples. All right? That was known. And what Phil did was, it was Phil's charge, and it was something that Phil did that a lot of people in the city of Oakland didn't think he could do. They didn't think that he could partner with a competent organization that could ship minerals. So they had these different contracts, and he did that. He did that. And not only that, he did that under conditions, contractual conditions, where covered cars would be used. The people involved, led by Phil, they bent over backward, okay? Bent over backward to say, hey, you know what? We are going to make this environmentally friendly. And lest you think that's funny, I want to introduce you to a man whose name you should know. His name is Fred Blackwell, because Fred Blackwell said to me on August 14th of 2012, he specifically said, and you're about to hear it, he specifically said that the Oakland bulk and oversized terminal was a, how do you put it? He said it was a gift to the environmental community. That's what he said. The same project that you went to protest, he said it's a, I'm plugging in a speaker here. He said it was a gift to the environmental community. And here is August 16th, 2012, all right? Here is Fred. It's a 13-minute video, but I'm going to, right here, I'm going to show you right here. I'm waiting for it to stop buffering and play. Okay, so here we go. Watch this. There it is.
Today's world of high-speed
Let me fast forward here.
text messaging and social networking, we often find ourselves searching for information.
Hey, blah 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 for me. Okay.
News, sports, politics.
There we go.
All right. Excellent. We're with Fred Blackwell. Fred is the assistant city administrator in the city of Oakland. And Fred, give us an update regarding the Oakland Army base. Where are we?
Sure. You know, after lots of years of planning and coming up with different development proposals for the Army base, we're really happy about where we are right now in terms of the development program. As you know, in the past there have been proposals around luxury car dealerships and casinos and maybe retail malls and things like that. And what we've landed on is, I think, a program that is going to be complementary of the Port of Oakland and really helping it to maintain its competitiveness, but also produce, I think, a lot of good high-paying jobs for Oaklanders. There are really four core components to the development program. One is the development of a new break bulk marine terminal. And for those who don't know, break bulk commodities are things like iron ore, grain, and stuff like that. That's basically shipped in the bows of a ship, which is really complementary and quite different from the port's main activity out there in Oakland, which is, as most folks know, is containerized products. And so this will be the only deep water break bulk marine terminal in Northern California. So we think it will be very competitive and be the impetus for a lot of import and export coming through the Port of Oakland and through the city of Oakland in general. The second component to the program is about 1 million square feet of logistics and warehousing, and trade logistics warehouses, essentially. And there we're talking about things where people who are either importing or exporting through that new break bulk marine terminal or through the Port of Oakland in general will have new state-of-the-art facilities to do that work. And we think that that also will be quite competitive. The third dimension to the program is actually rail. Rail to serve the new warehouses and rail to serve the new break bulk marine terminal. Rail is important because there are important environmental justice benefits associated with it. When products come in from overseas or go out from the country, the use of rail rather than truck traffic through West Oakland and the emissions that are created as a result of that is really important in terms of supporting the environmental justice things that are going on in West Oakland. And it's a more efficient way to transport goods. And so we think that the rail stuff is going to be important. There'll be a rail component that supports those things that I talked about, but will also connect to a new rail yard on the port side of the Army base, and that will basically mean that products will be able to come from overseas right into the breakbulk marine terminal, can get taken into these warehousing facilities and out through the rest of the country and the rest of the region, in some cases without ever having to be transported by trucks. The fourth component, which is also, I think, important from an environmental justice standpoint, is in the northern part of the area. There'll be 2 new recycling companies that will be located on the Army base. What's important about that is these are companies that will be relocated out of West Oakland. And so the notion of being able to both put these recycling companies in a place that is, we think, a lot more appropriate in terms of their use on the Army base, but also relieve the neighborhood, the West Oakland community of the environmental negatives associated with having those things in the neighborhood, is a perfect win-win situation. And so those 4 components are the key components of the program from a bricks and mortar point of view, and we anticipate being in the ground on that by December of 2013.
Continue.
Okay, so I'm going to stop there. It's a longer video, and again, it's called Oakland, Fred Blackwell, Oakland Army Base Project, Oakland Bulk and Oversized Terminal. It's on my YouTube channel, Zenny62 on YouTube, all right? This, again, check the date. Check the date. August 16th, 2012. Fred Blackwell is now the CEO of the San Francisco Foundation, okay? I'll bet you didn't have anybody tell you that, did you? And did you hear what he said? He said, how many times did he express the project as a gift to the environmental community? All right? And not only that, you might say, well, he didn't mention coal. Think for a moment, all right? There was a reason he didn't mention coal. Even though documents mentioned iron ore, coal, and sulfur. At the time, before Tom Steyer came along and put much of his millions of dollars into trying to get people to think that coal was bad, and I think he was doing that basically to clear out lands to reuse them as real estate. That's what I think. I think he's trying to build more market rate housing in the San Francisco Bay Area. That's my personal opinion, okay? That is my personal opinion. Otherwise, why go through this effort the way he's done it? But I digress. What's happened is a lot of people have just focused on coal, and they have no idea what coal is used for. If you take coal and iron ore form to make steel. All right? Steel. Are you listening to me? Steel. I didn't say anything about fossil fuels. I said steel. Do you realize, my friends, that 80% of the world's urban development is done with steel? In other words, let me put it another way to you. 80% of the world's urban development is there because of coal. All right? So you're not going to see a loss of demand in coal worldwide for a long time. Now, someone else will say, oh, no, that's not true, and they'll start yelling, and they'll present a statistic that deals only with the United States or the United Kingdom or some of the other industrialized countries that are not part of the newly industrialized countries. When you start looking at Japan and China and Korea and other nations that have a younger industrial base, guess what? Their demand for coal is high, not so much for fossil fuel use, but because they make steel. We used to make steel. We gave up making steel years ago, and it wasn't because of any environmental reason. Don't let anybody fool you and make you think that, okay? No. It's because starting in the early 80s, the late 70s and the early 80s, Japan, most notably, dumped their steel product in the United States. What I mean, I don't mean just, it's not like they took it and went, boom. No. They priced it so low, they priced it at a point per steel unit, okay, per unit, that was so low that they could never recover what it cost to make each one of them. You understand what I'm saying? And you would say, how did they do that, Zenny? Well, because the governments came in this case the government of Japan through its Ministry of International Trade and Industry, and it subsidized the dumping of steel. Okay? A very controversial practice that still occurs today, allegedly, with respect to China. All right? Now, in this conversation, do you see how significant the Oakland bulk and oversized terminal is with respect to world economic demand and how much of a boon it can be for Oakland's economy? But then something else, too. Ask yourself this question. Fred Blackwell himself said, hey, basically, virtually no trucks. Some of you have said we don't want asthma in our neighborhood. There's no trucks. In fact, why isn't anyone protesting the current number of trucks that go through West Oakland because of the Port of Oakland today? I'm just asking, okay? I'm just asking. All right? Do you feel like you've been manipulated? Because you should. Because you have been. There's always this thing about the truth setting you free, all right? Because here's another place where the truth will set you free. And I want you to see this map that, if you haven't seen this map, you should have a look at it, okay? And this artist rendition, all right? Take a look at this, my friends. This is the bulk and oversized terminal right here, okay? This is water. What is this? It's the San Francisco Bay Bridge. There's no neighborhood around this. Take a look. Boom, there it is. Some of you may recognize this as the toll gate on the way to the Bay Bridge, okay? That's what this is. This is the inlet to the San Francisco Bay, okay? There's no neighborhood around here. Not only that, trucks do not service. These are conveyors, all right, that go on the ship to rail. Ship to rail. No trucks. Ship to rail. No trucks. Okay? So again, you've been lied to. There's more. You know what? If there's anything, if anything, ask the people that told you this why they didn't show you exactly where this thing was supposed to go. And ask them why they're not telling you the unvarnished truth. Okay? And ask them, this is the key question. Why is it that they're afraid to have this built, knowing full well that the over 200 jobs, direct jobs that'll be created, not to mention indirect, will in many cases help people that are currently homeless. The thousands of homeless people that are in West Oakland. Ask the people who are giving you this information, why don't they care about having those folks employed and placed in not just low income, but very low income, extremely low income housing? Ask those questions. It's about time we had not just real talk, but real action. Yeah, people down there suffering. And it is shameful that you've had well-meaning people, okay, take up arms almost tribal-like against people, threaten violence against folks over an idea that, in point of fact, is not true, okay? It's not true at all. It's time for truth, and it's time to have a new approach. And if you say, hey, look, what about climate change? Let me tell you something about climate change. Yes, climate change is extremely real. The cold reason why we're in this position today is simply because we've reached a point where our continued population growth itself is contributing to climate change. And there are studies that will tell you that even with a dramatic reduction of the kind many call for in carbon emissions, guess what? If the population continues to grow, we're still going to have the problem. That's the cold reality. The cold reality is we're at a point where we have to start talking about how to have more people on this planet and yet make sure the planet can sustain us. It's beyond carbon emissions. It's the very, very, very thorny conversation of how many people can we sustain on this planet. And I hate to tell you that, folks, but that's where we are. Now, here, unfortunately, here's the good news. The good news is that our carrying capacity, is in a sense helped by the fact that our overall population growth has slowed to just over 1% per year. Now, according to the Limits to Growth model, and if you've never heard of the Limits to Growth model, please read the Limits to Growth book, and then its sister book called Beyond the Limits. 1974 for one publication, 1993 for the other, both based on system dynamics, which I beg of you to learn. We were supposed to have been at zero population growth by 2010. We're not there. It's 2019. That's the real conversation. How do we slow population growth worldwide? Well, in the United States, it's beyond slow. It's negative. You've seen the stats? Take a look at them. But for the world, it's slowed to just over 1.1%. That points to a positive future from the cold perspective of our population's growth going in other words, our population increasing but at a decreasing rate. It really is where we want to be, okay? And ultimately, naturally through deaths, natural deaths, have the population reduce a little bit over time. But as it's reducing over time, we improve our technological applications to get to dramatic reductions in carbon emissions. That is the real discussion. And it's a hard one. It involves us telling China, hey, you have to, it's not stop doing it. The better way is to say to China, you know, we have this technology that we'd like you to apply, and we'll do some sharing. That's much better than us telling them what to do. Right now, we have one group not listening to the other because the other group, led by the Chinas, says, hey, wait a minute, you had your fun. Why don't we get to have ours in terms of production? Why don't we get to produce steel? We're number one, now you want to shut us down. The better way to do it is through technology. And what better place to develop that technology than the San Francisco Bay Area, right? So ask this other question. Why aren't we activating the real brains that are in the Bay Area and marrying those brains with heavy industry in both iron ore, coal, and minerals and coming up with a solution? And here's the other real fact. Coal has already been transported through Oakland many times. Yeah, many times, folks. Okay? Again, you've been lied to. It's time you knew the truth. Thank you for watching.